For most of the 20th century, you could not buy a telephone in America. You rented it from a single company that owned the wire in your wall, the cable under your street, and the laboratory that would one day invent the transistor. One company controlled almost every call the nation made for 75 years. And the story of how it finally came apart begins with a lawsuit almost no one expected to win. In this video, we'll step inside the largest company the world had ever seen and look at how it actually worked. We'll see why a telephone was something a family could touch every day but never legally own. We'll listen in on the rooms where thousands of young women connected the country by hand, one cord at a time. We'll learn how a single corporate slogan justified swallowing nearly every competitor in sight. And we'll understand how one government lawsuit, filed in 1974, ended up shattering all of it into pieces. To understand the monopoly, picture America before it. In the late 1800s, after Alexander Graham Bell's original patents expired, the telephone business exploded into chaos. Hundreds of independent companies strung their own wires down the same streets. A town might have two competing phone systems that could not talk to each other. A doctor who wanted to reach every patient sometimes paid for two separate telephones on two separate desks from two separate companies. The poles grew thick with overlapping cable. It was loud, redundant, and maddening. In the cities, the skyline filled with wires. Some intersections carried dozens of crossarms stacked one above another, a tangle of copper that blotted out the daylight. Service was unreliable, prices swung wildly, and a call across a state line was an adventure with no guarantee of success. This was the problem that demanded a solution, and a man named Theodore Vail believed he had it. Vail had helped run the Bell Company in its earliest days, walked away, then returned in 1907 to lead the American Telephone and Telegraph Company. He looked at the noise and the duplication and saw not competition, but waste. A telephone network, he argued, was unlike any ordinary business. Its value grew with every person connected to it. And a thing like that, he believed, worked best as a single, unified whole. It was a seductive idea. It was also the perfect justification for swallowing everyone else, and the old fractured world of competing wires could not hold against it. Vail's argument came down to three words, printed in the company's reports and stamped across its advertising: one system, one policy, universal service. It sounded like a public promise. In practice, it was a battle plan. The logic was elegant. If the telephone network was most valuable when everyone could reach everyone, then fragmentation wasn't just inefficient. It was a flaw to be corrected. The solution was a single company carrying every call. And if that company behaved itself, accepted government oversight, and pledged to wire even the unprofitable countryside, then perhaps the public would accept the one thing it normally feared: a monopoly. Vail moved fast. Under his direction, at&t bought independent telephone companies by the hundreds. It took a controlling interest in Western Union, the telegraph giant. The market believed the story that bigger meant better, that one network meant a reliable one. But the buying spree drew the attention of the federal government, which began to wonder whether this was consolidation or conquest. So in 1913, at&t blinked first, in an arrangement known as the Kingsbury Commitment, named for the company vice president who signed it. at&t agreed to sell off its Western Union shares, to stop swallowing competing phone companies outright, and to let independent lines connect to its long-distance network. On paper, it was a retreat. In reality, it was the deal that made the monopoly legitimate. By accepting regulation, at&t traded the freedom to do anything for the security to do nearly everything. The government would set its rates and guarantee its survival. In exchange, the company would become a kind of public utility. Privately owned, nationally essential, and almost impossible to dislodge, the age of Ma Bell had begun. Start with the object itself, the telephone on the hall table. For most of this era, that phone did not belong to the household using it. It belonged to the company. A customer paid a monthly charge that bundled the line and the equipment together, and the handset was simply rented year after year, sometimes for decades. Moved to a new house and the phone stayed behind. It was company property to the last screw. That property was built to survive a war. The standard desk set, introduced around 1950, with its heavy handset and rotary dial, was engineered to last 30 or 40 years of daily abuse. There was a cold logic to the over-engineering. The company owned the phones, so the company paid to repair them. A device that never broke was a device that never cost it a service call. And there was a rule that protected all of this: the ban on what the company called foreign attachments. Connecting anything to the line that AT&T had not made and did not own was, by the terms of the tariff, forbidden. Not a competitor's headset, not even, in one famous dispute, a small cup that clipped onto the mouthpiece to muffle the sound. The line was theirs. The phone was theirs. And for a long time, the law agreed. Behind every call, for the first half of this story, sat a human being. Before machines could route a call automatically, a caller lifted the receiver and reached an operator, almost always a young woman, seated at a towering switchboard. The work was a kind of choreography. In front of her rose a wall of small holes, each one a telephone line, glowing when a customer wanted to connect. She answered with a practiced phrase, took the requested number, and pulled a cord from her board to plug the two parties together, all in a few seconds. A busy operator handled hundreds of these connections an hour, her hands moving across the board in a blur of brass and fabric cord. The job came with rules that reached well beyond the work. Operators were often required to be unmarried. Their posture was monitored, their speech scripted, the warmth in their voices effectively mandated. The company sold the idea of the cheerful, ever-patient voice on the line. Supervisors walked the rows, listening, timing, correcting. It was demanding, low-paid, and tightly controlled. It was also, for a great many young women, one of the few respectable office jobs open to them at all. The switchboard was the human engine of the network, and the company knew its quietest secret was that the machine was made of people. The genius of the Bell system was that it owned every link in its own chain. The local lines, the long-distance network strung between cities, the operators, the billing, all in-house, but it went further than service. The company that made the telephones was Western Electric, AT&T's own manufacturing arm. Nearly every phone, every switchboard, every mile of specialized cable was produced inside the system, for the system. There was no outside supplier to negotiate with, because the supplier was family. And then there was the crown jewel, Bell Telephone Laboratories. Funded by the steady rivers of monopoly revenue, Bell Labs became one of the most productive research institutions of the century. Its scientists invented the transistor, the tiny switch that every modern computer chip is built from. They laid the foundations of information theory, helped build the first communication satellites, and, in a quiet corner in the early 1970s, created the Unix operating system, whose descendants now run much of the internet and nearly every smartphone, a regulated monopoly shielded from competition and guaranteed a profit, could afford to think in decades. It could fund pure research with no immediate payoff. The cushion that critics resented was also the thing that paid for some of the century's greatest inventions. None of it would have held together without a careful piece of financial engineering hidden inside the phone bill. The company was a regulated monopoly, which meant government commissions allowed it to earn a fixed, reasonable return on what it invested, and in exchange, controlled what it could charge. Inside that arrangement sat a deliberate imbalance. Long-distance calls and business lines were priced high, well above what they cost to provide. Local residential service was priced low, often below cost. The profits from the expensive calls quietly flowed across to subsidize the cheap ones. A businessman calling across the country was, without knowing it, helping to pay for a farmhouse phone 3 states away. This was universal service made real. It was how the company could justify stringing wire to remote towns that no rational competitor would ever serve, because the lucrative routes carried the unprofitable ones on their back. The whole structure depended on no one being allowed to skim only the rich routes and leave the rest. Hold that idea, because the day someone figured out how to compete for just the profitable long-distance traffic, the arithmetic that held the entire system together would begin to fall apart. The threat did not come from another telephone company. It came from a new way of moving a signal, and from someone willing to compete for only the most profitable slice of the business. In the 1960s, a small firm called Microwave Communications Incorporated, MCI, proposed building a private microwave link to carry calls between Chicago and St. Louis for business customers, undercutting AT&T's long-distance prices. It was exactly the kind of cherry-picking the old system had been designed to prevent. AT&T fought it at every turn. But in 1969, federal regulators let MCI in. The wall had a crack in it. There was a second crack, older and just as dangerous. The ban on foreign attachments had already been challenged. A device called the Carter phone, which let a two-way radio connect to the phone line, was ruled permissible in 1968 over the company's objections. Slowly, the principle that AT&T owned everything touching its network was being chipped away. Then came the blow that would prove fatal. In November of 1974, the United States Department of Justice filed an antitrust lawsuit against AT&T. The charge, in essence, was that the company had used its monopoly over local phone service to crush competition in long distance and in equipment, the very vertical integration that had been its pride. The government wanted it broken up. For years, the company fought, confident in its own indispensability. It had survived government scrutiny before. It had a century of arguments about efficiency and universal service ready to deploy. The men who ran it could not quite believe that a system this essential, this woven into the fabric of the nation, could actually be dismantled. They were wrong. As the case ground forward under a determined federal judge, the evidence and the legal logic tightened. By the early 1980s, it had become clear that AT&T was likely to lose, and to lose badly, perhaps in ways it could not control. So the company chose to control its own ending. In 1982, AT&T agreed to settle. It would give up the thing at the heart of the lawsuit: the local telephone companies, the part that reached into every home. The decision was made. The largest corporation on earth had agreed to take itself apart. All that remained was to carry it out. The breakup took effect on the first day of 1984. The Bell system split into a long-distance AT&T and 7 regional companies, the so-called Baby Bells, each handling local service in its slice of the country. Overnight, the largest company in the world ceased to exist in its old form, but its shadow is everywhere. Every time a phone is bought outright in a store, chosen, owned, swapped at will, that freedom traces directly back to the fall of the rule that said the phone could only be rented. The entire market in telephones and modems and answering machines exists because that wall came down. The transistor inside every device, the satellite relays that carry calls and broadcasts, the operating systems humming inside servers and smartphones. A startling share of the modern world was born inside a laboratory paid for by monopoly phone bills. The thing that was broken up also funded much of what replaced it. and the corporate map keeps the memory too. Those 7 baby bells did not stay 7. Over the following decades, they merged and merged again until much of what was scattered in 1984 had quietly reassembled into a small number of giants, including a company that today still carries the old at&t name. The empire was broken, then it slowly grew back in a different shape. Even the promise survives. The idea that everyone, rich or remote, deserves a connection, universal service, is still written into telecommunications law, still funded by fees buried in modern bills. The slogan Theodore Vail used to justify a monopoly outlived the monopoly itself. So what was lost when Ma Bell came apart, and what was won? What was won is easy to hold. Prices on long-distance calls fell. Telephones became cheap, varied, disposable. A torrent of new devices and services rushed through the opening, and the slow, single take-it-or-leave-it system gave way to choice. The world got faster. What was lost is harder to name. There was, for a time, one network that simply worked, a phone that always had a dial tone, a system so reliable that people stopped thinking about it at all. And there was the laboratory, free to chase questions with no deadline and no market, funded by a monopoly that could afford to be patient. Few institutions since have been able to think in such long horizons. The country traded a single, dependable, expensive system for a faster, cheaper, noisier one. It is not obvious that this was the wrong trade. It is only obvious that it was a trade, that something was given up to get what came next. A whole machine once stood between two people who wanted to talk. The wire, the switchboard, the operator, the company that owned it all. Today, that machine has vanished into the air, invisible, taken for granted. The voice still travels. The empire that carried it does not. For 75 years, one company held the whole conversation in its hands. Then it let go. There is a strange footnote to all of this. While at&t was busy ruling the telephone, the scientists inside Bell Labs had already built the invention that would help make the old monopoly obsolete, and the company never fully grasped what it was holding. If the story of how the firm that invented the future failed to see that future coming sounds worth hearing, that full breakdown is waiting right here. This has been How America Worked. The line is still open.